DAW.
Oh yeah, you told me.
Which I think is maybe a weird thing, like, or I don't know. It's such a.
You know what? In Israel, it's like the number one DAW.
Is it really?
Yes, and I actually I don't use Cubase. I don't know how to use it, but it always seemed a little bit clunky to me. But actually in Israel, it's super popular because it was like the number one. What's the word? Like Napster. Like it was like illegally downloaded by everyone.
Yeah.
In the 90s.
Right.
And so it just became like the default DAW of Israel.
That's hilarious.
And now everyone uses Cubase.
Well, that's interesting.
Now in recent years, Ableton and Logic and Pro Tools have had more of a resurgence, but Cubase is like the DAW of the nation, I would say.
That's really interesting. I don't feel like it's that popular here in the States.
No, it's definitely not.
It's more.
But people swear by it that use it.
Yeah. Well, I
know Dwayne uses Nuendo, which is like
does.
even more off kilter than
He does.
than Cubase.
Yeah, and of course I use Pro Tools as well and Logic. I did a bunch of mixes in Logic last year for an artist, but I prefer my own productions in Cubase. It suits my workflow. There's zero latency issues when you're tracking and you're already at like a done mix, and there's all kinds of processing on your master bus and all this stuff. I don't know how they do it, but there's like zero latency. It's kind of a beautiful thing, and I just think it sounds great. All the DAWs sound good. They all do the same stuff. It's kind of what you're comfortable with and what your workflow is, but I do like Cubase. But we were going to talk about mixing.
Fair enough. You could give me more of a spiel on Cubase if you want. I'm happy to hear it.
No, it's not really like a focal point right now, I guess. But I just thought it was interesting because like some people are like Cubase, like because Pro Tools and Logic are so huge here, and Ableton now too. But
yeah, not for the kind of music you're working on, but
right, exactly.
So are you kind of taking the mix out of the production session and starting a new project? And if so, like, what does that template look like?
Yeah.
Or are you kind of like mixing as you go?
For my own productions, I'm kind of always mixing. And I like this concept. And I feel like it's I hear some other people that I respect talking about it. It's like when you're working, it should always sound good and it should always sound like a record and it should always be inspiring. So I feel like I'm always kind of mixing as I go. Save for like big automation moves or anything like that. I do tend to do a lot of automating in my mixes, and I usually save that for last, but tonally getting things popping and just getting the tones right and everything, I feel like I'm working on that always, and that involves decapitators and compressors and all the tools that are considered kind of mixing tools, you know. But other times I will get hired for just a mix, and that's a different thing. And sometimes I'll do that in Pro Tools. It is nice to start off from where they left their rough, and sometimes that's a Pro Tools session. Obviously, you have to have the same plugins. But
yeah.
And other times I get stems or, wave files, and then you just bring it in. And I don't really have a template for mixing. It's always kind of a clean slate each time. Same goes for my productions. I mean, there are things in my templates like my routing and my reamping and any of that stuff. But in terms of having a mix template, I don't really do it. I feel like if I did, I would be deleting a lot of plugins right away, or maybe I would be inclined to use something out of not laziness, but like
default.
Yeah, default. My Echo Boys settings are just sitting there, and I should probably just use that effect for this, and rather than like, oh, what can I pull up? What am I really hearing in my mind that I want to pull up and carve out? I guess that's me. I know a lot of people use templates, and it's very
every effect is novel. Like every time you pull up a reverb or a delay, it's going to be a new
every time.
Wow.
And usually,
I feel like that's like.
Go ahead.
No, that's like one thing that I'm not at all like. Is I do have like a bunch of reverbs and delays that I've used over the years and kind of fine tuned, you know.
Sure.
And I'll just have them. I'll have like all those kind of buses set up in a mix, so I can easily get what because there's enough variety within those. There's like 10 of them that, you know, I'll be able to find the kind of sound I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But
I think,
but there is something great about the beauty of of just like everything gets its own thing, or every song gets its own room reverb or whatever it is.
I think it's definitely, I could definitely work the other way too. It's just how I do it. It's just how my brain works. And I don't know if this is typical, but like everything will get its own treatment, or like the amount of bussing and multing of different sounds is kind of maybe more than a lot of people do. Like it might look cumbersome to someone else, but to me, it's just how my brain works. Like, and then I don't have.
What would be an example of that multi of like the multing, like a mid range of the bass plus like a sub of the bass?
I guess a lot of people do those types of things. But even like, I mean, I don't know what I'm saying, and it's probably not that special. But I feel like I'll have like maybe there's a kick and then a kick sample and then a distorted version of something that's kick, and then like. And I'm routing all this through a kick channel, and then that's its own fader, and then like kind of each drum gets like I'm kind of separating. I always want something to be on its own fader and have its own. If there's an effect send on something, it's the only thing that's being sent to that effect. So I know exactly how to EQ that effect because I know exactly what is going through that channel. And that type of thing. And I'm doing lots of parallel processing these days on drums and on vocals, and maybe the way I'm routing those things is weird, or I don't know, maybe not, but
cool. Yeah. I do that also with like kicks and stuff. Like I what I love about Logic is the track stacks actually. So I'll use the track stacks as like a pre-bus. So every drum element will have a track stack. So there'll be a kick track stack, a snare track stack, overheads track stack, and they'll all kind of feed into the overall drum bus after that.
Amazing. So so Logic.
That's how
Logic makes it easy, I guess, in that way. That's really cool.
And I didn't do it. You know what? I was doing buses into buses, and I only did the track stack because I had to open somebody else's mix and work from there once. And I'm like, you know what? This track stack thing is kind of working for me.
Yeah.
So then I started using. Yeah.
And
so you never know.
Doesn't Pro Tools do it now too? Like basically.
Yeah, they must have something. They must have something similar. I don't work on Pro Tools, but from what I've seen in videos, it looks like they do.
I think they just implemented something similar to that, like a year ago or something. I don't know.
Avid finally catching up. Wait, so in terms of like parallel processing, are you big on the parallel compression thing? Is that your jam?
It's not always compression. I do like parallel distortion. I know saturation's a big word right now, and it's a lot of people are doing it, but it really is a sound, and it is a modern. I don't know. I like it.
Saturation is the modern sound. That is what I'm learning.
Yeah, and it's really a sound that I like, and I a lot of times I'm doing it in parallel, rather than just like we're gonna smash the drum kit. You kind of do it in parallel, and you sneak it under, so you're getting. It's almost like a compression effect, because that's what I guess like a distortion box is, compressing something to a certain extent,
right? Or as like Andrew was saying on his Andrew Mari was saying on his podcast, is it's just density, right? Like you're adding more,
he was talking about a lot of that.
More weight to the sound,
right? I mean, all the plugins now have mix knobs, which is awesome.
Yes. I was going to ask you if you're using mix knobs or if you're kind of like doing it on multiple faders. And I've heard people say that they prefer it on multiple faders. Yeah. I'm not totally sure why.
I don't know. Like I think I do it on faders. Like a lead vocal, I'll have it on 2 faders going into some other bus, because I'll be adjusting that a lot throughout the mix.
Right. Automating it.
Yeah, automating it, and just really getting it in the sweet spot for each section of the song or something, where a mix, not even like on the UAD stuff, I don't think the mix knobs even have like a numerical value. You kind of have to eyeball it sometimes.
It's percentage, yeah. And it's like, that is, you don't really know what you're doing when you're mixing it.
Right.
I feel that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like, okay, what's 50% versus 5% of a mix knob, on a lead vocal? Like, I don't really know.
Yeah, I guess it's...
Is that like minus 20 and minus 15? Maybe.
Like, but I love that they all have mix knobs on them. That's great. It's really cool. And I use it all the time.
Yeah. Do you do anything that helps you work faster in the studio in general? Like, just like...
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is just having everything ready to go and everything patched in. So like here at my studio, I don't have a ton of stuff, like I said, but I've got my upright piano. I've got this guitar rig set up over here, a bunch of guitars, a MIDI keyboard, a real synth, a drum kit. It's not this way today because I'm about to set up for a different workflow for a few recordings. But usually I like to have everything patched in, and the studio is working as kind of one brain, and everything's synced. And like, if I have an inspired idea, I literally just reach over and lay it down, and that's kind of that's important for working fast and in the moment.
Love it.
I guess.
Yeah, Dwayne was saying similar stuff also on his episode.
Oh, really cool.
He doesn't have patch bass. He just every channel is what it is. He knows what it is. It's just
that's right. I remember him saying that. Yeah, it really does help when you're producing, to just have everything kind of ready to go. And maybe that's another reason that I don't love like scrolling through presets on samplers or any VSTs, because then I lose the moment, and then I'm like, oh, that sounds sucks, or like, all right, moving on to the next, and then that one's not right either, and then 30 minutes later you still don't have your sound when you could just be like rocking some other thing.
Yeah, I feel that when the artist is in the room and I'm looking for kind of drum groove. So if I'm let's say in Steven Slate Drums 5, looking for like a drum groove based in there just to get an inspiration, like the artist is in the back of the room bored, like it might be better if I just, I actually sold my drum set, but if I like even just come up with a drum part on a MIDI keyboard is sometimes more effective than trying to look for the right kind of rhythm. Yeah. Because you could just do it so fast as a musician with your intuition to kind of just lay it out, and then nobody's bored. Right. But scrolling through that stuff is like, it's a time suck, and like I don't think artists like it. Like I think maybe they're into like scrolling through Instagram when that happens. I don't know, but
I think that there are producers that are they have such a vast knowledge of their sample library, and they have organizational techniques where they just know exactly how to get those sounds happening. I have not really been so smart in that way with my sample libraries. I have tons of great sounds that I like to use, but they get used more in the mix or whatever like that. When I'm producing, it's more like I said, I come at everything as a musician. It's like, let me just sit at the drums, even if we're recording this as a scratch drum part with one mic.
But the idea is there,
and it's gonna feel better than me trying to program it in the MIDI roll or whatever. And like, I totally vibe with that. Yeah.
As a guitarist, I want to ask you if what your thoughts are on virtual amplifiers versus real versus, I don't know, the what are they called, the Kempers, that kind of stuff. Like what are you doing? What do you think works?
Anything works. If you can make it work. The plugins, some of them I think are pretty cool. Like UAD, their Fender's really good. I use that a lot for sketching out ideas. I usually end up redoing stuff, but sometimes it makes it to the final mix. Kempers, I did use Kempers on a tour, and I could never get it sounding quite right, but I think that it's probably gotten better, and maybe it just takes more time to sit down and program that stuff. You have to really be a good programmer. Some of the plugins just don't cut it, but there's good stuff out there. I prefer real guitar amps. As a guitarist, nice. I haven't quite found a replacement for the real thing in terms of amps.
I've heard every answer on this show, and it's all legit.
What do you think?
I mean, I don't own an amp. I'm a bass player, so I don't. Mm-hmm. I've never invested in a guitar amp. I've always been able to make it work with the plugins. Yeah. I'm actually really enjoying the Corey Wong amp.
Oh yeah.
It's Neural DSP, and I got some really cool, actually like fuzzy tones out of it.
Cool.
On a production I'm working on now. I was using